Okay, quiz time. What percentage of public servants in New Zealand were born overseas? No one can stat from stats can answer. Okay. Someone have a go.
20%.
10%, we've got 10 and 20. Any?
5.
25%.
5.
What percentage of public servants in Auckland are Asian? This is what Liz was talking about. You know, you've got to, we've got a bunch of perceptions, I'm sure, but we might not know the facts. Someone give me an answer? I heard one.
10.
10?
2.8%.
18%. So, you know, only about 6% less than representation in the wider population. You're starting to catch up. Okay, so of these three ethnic groups, which is underrepresented? I learned that used the term quite advisedly in terms of their reputation, their percentage of population. Māori, Pacifica, Pākehā. Which one is there less of a percentage of them in the public service than there is in the population? Pākehā. All right, let's get some slides up. So, that's the New Zealand population figures, which almost but not completely match Liz's, to go with Liz's one. In the middle, you've got the public service. 72% of public servants, Pākehā. 16% Māori, 8% Pacifica. And Asian at 7% under, but increasing. You get problems with the last graph though when you look at leadership in the state services. That's where the differential is, and that's where a big focus has to be, and it's a big focus of the Commission's work around what can you do to make sure that the leadership of the public service not only better represents the society we serve, but actually better represents the people we need to lead. Next slide's Auckland. So, you can actually see the public service in Auckland and Auckland are starting to match up. And that's improved quite a lot in the last few years. Leadership is better, but still a long way to go. So you've actually got 12%, where am I going? So with Pacifica leaders in Auckland, you know, it's much better than the national picture, for example. Māori leadership across the country has improved a lot at, I think it's on about 14% now compared to 16% for the population. So it's going in the right direction, but there's a way to go. Having a more diverse public service obviously is a good thing. You know, the business case is pretty compelling. The more you both reflect your customers and understand your customers, the more likely you're going to be able to meet their needs. There's the strong arguments around diversity of thinking. The broader range of views you have in your organisation, the more likely you're going to get better decisions coming out of it. And of course, and it's been touched on today, is the issue around legitimacy. If you want the public to think about the public service as legitimate, the institutions of state as legitimate, they need to both see themselves in those institutions, and they also need people in those institutions, whatever their backgrounds, who can understand them. So, you know, I think the case is pretty compelling, but just having a diverse organisation in terms of better numbers isn't going to get you there. You need to have that diversity represented at all levels of your organisation, and you need to have inclusive organisations, organisations where people's different views, different ways of thinking, different values are represented. And I guess, you know, my take on these figures, and they all come from the Human Resource Capability Survey, which is just out today. You can see it on our website. My take out from that is we're doing all right in diversity if you just look at the bottom line figure. We've got a way to go in leadership, and I think it's an open question on whether we're actually becoming increasingly inclusive as well as becoming more diverse. Just a couple of other interesting facts. In terms of female representation in the public service leadership, we like patting ourselves on the back about that. It's at 42% now, previously was 38%. We do have 60% women in the public service, so we've probably got a way to go there. Gender pay gap's been touched on. It's not really moving. Ethnic pay gap. This is something which there's not as much visibility about. It's either going backwards or it's slowed down. Next slide, please. Again, sticking with the gender pay gap thing, but you see men and women start the public service at reasonably similar levels, but because women obviously have greater responsibilities around childcare, that's where the gap widens and it just doesn't close at the other end. We're going to pick into the ethnic data to see what that tells us about that as well. That's 25% people born overseas, but it's not surprising. 27% of the workforce is, Liz pointed out, we're born overseas. We've got figures from stats on disability, so 16% of public servants have some disability or they report it. This last one's interesting. 23% of public servants are over 55. It was only 10% 15 years ago. All right. Next slide, thanks. I won't spend too much time on this, but the Commission really has two broad roles in this diversity space. One, I think, is what I've talked about, just providing information. Information helps us deal with realities as opposed to opinions. It also provides good benchmarks and informs better strategies. Second thing, though, is we have a bit of a role in both providing leadership to the wider system, but importantly, helping to coordinate and align efforts. As we've heard today, there's great examples all across the public service of people doing great things. We don't always know about it, we don't share it that well, it doesn't necessarily fit together into a coherent framework. And that's one of the things that we've been working on in the last few months, and we really appreciate May's report because it came at a great time, is just trying to come up with a bit of a framework to make sense of all the things that we're doing in this area. Just back to that slide quickly. The vision's a reasonably straightforward one. It's just about having public services that reflect, value and understand the communities that we serve. Surely all public service agencies can buy into that. Next slide. We're doing a bunch of things, providing information, helping hold ourselves to account, but also the people we employ, the chief executives, to account, to focus on this stuff, sharing best practice, and focusing on 2 or 3, probably 3 or 4 particular areas where we've got initiatives underway. And that's what's in the last box. So the stuff around leadership development, that's really key. We've got to get greater diversity in our leaders, and our leaders, whatever their backgrounds are, need to be able to respond to diversity better. Flexible work is key, but not just from a gender perspective. As you get increasingly diverse workforces in the public sector, they may need different types of flexibility as well. Recruitment and supply, I think the public service is pretty rubbish at advertising itself as a great profession. Different agencies are pretty good at advertising their bit of it. We need to be doing more in that area, and ways in which not just attract people, but retain them in the public service. We've got some good stats now that show, whilst we're getting increasing numbers of Asian graduates joining the public service, not many are sticking around. Māori and Pacifica, we're getting the numbers up there. They tend to, once they're in, stick around. We need to understand why that's the case. And then just the last thing is around positive, inclusive workplaces. You need to have a culture in organisations where people feel valued when they present a different view. So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. This stuff has been worked on and will be shared around public servants, and probably more widely in the next couple of months. The payback for this is really big. The payback for the public service is big, but actually the payback for society is significant, and we've tried to paint a bit of a picture about if we're successful, what it would look like in 10 years. So that's part of the strategy as well. Thanks a lot.